Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who just watched USA versus Brazil with me for the second time. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hey, buddy.
What do you think on the second run?
A little bit better at times, and then a little bit worse at times.
I think that's a really good answer.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard our quick take, hot take, you'll find that the previous show in the feed, we recorded that immediately after watching the game, where we were a little downbeat and a little frustrated with various things.
Yeah.
I would argue that we have a better understanding of what happened in the game, but we feel basically the same.
Yeah, more or less. I think I've seen a lot of the reaction be like, yes, they didn't win, but it's a full-strength Brazil. It's a young team. It was fine. And I don't think I would necessarily disagree with that. Like, I wouldn't say, no, that's totally wrong. But I would say that it was not as good as maybe that would suggest.
Yeah.
Yes, Brazil are Brazil, but I think there are ways you can set up, even in a short time period, even in a short training camp, to be a bit more prepared to face a team like Brazil. And I don't think the United States did or were.
Interesting. All right, so to get this out of the way, we put this in the quick take, hot take again early. Like, I was really standing, I guess is the word, for a 5-3-2, similar to what we did against France, where we would have numbers back and just try and close down all the angles so Brazil couldn't get through. I think we were that mismatched. What we went with in the end was a sort of, I would call it a 4-1-4-1, but it was also a bit changeable in that sometimes Tyler Adams would leave the midfield and join Bobby Wood to be like a 4-4-2 when Brazil had the ball in their own half. Is that fair?
It is. And I think to continue that, one thing that I think you spotted near the end of the game, which I think is very accurate, is that basically that's what Brazil did to the United States.
Yes.
And I think the U.S. was trying to balance it out. One of the things I wasn't sure of in the quick take, hot take was, why would you not go with a back five if you're going to be this sort of defensive 4-1-4-1? And I think the answer is, I don't think they meant to be defensive. I don't think they meant to be attacking by any stretch of the imagination. But I think the idea was, we will block off passing options. We'll have crowded numbers in the middle of the field, near midfield, and we'll either keep Brazil back and moving it between their center backs or looking for long balls, and we'll try to deal with it that way.
Yep.
I think that was the plan. I don't think it worked.
To echo what you're saying, I think the idea was to try and close everything down without retreating to the top of your own box, right? To maybe be, like you said, be at midfield and try and just make it really difficult for Brazil to make anything happen. And yet, it did not work at all, right? Because I know it only finished 2-0, but it definitely could have been a lot more.
It absolutely could have. I mean, there's the one when Neymar's played in, he's 1v1. That probably could have been a goal if Matt Miazga's not there. It's definitely a goal. There were plenty of other opportunities where it did feel like Brazil could have done more. And maybe we're just sort of like, it's a friendly, we're up 2-0, we're not trying to get anything broken.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if Brazil needed to score more goals, they could have found that extra gear and put a couple more away.
I mean, I maybe it's coincidence, but Sherlock Holmes says there's no such thing as coincidences, so why not? But it is worth noting that the United States started to get a few chances at the end of the first half, and then Brazil went back down and got the penalty. And it did feel a little bit in that moment like maybe the bear got poked and the bear got mad, and the bear decided we'll get one more.
You don't poke the Brazilian bear.
You don't.
It's got all kinds of stepovers.
Yes. But before we get into the Brazilian stepovers, we should say, I think we've maybe figured out what the U.S. was trying to do in that 4-1-4-1. Sit not deep, but sit in the middle, clog the middle, then occasionally step and put them under pressure and occasionally do the press.
That was the weird thing, right? Occasionally McKennie would pop out and occasionally Adams would pop out, but never enough to actually cause trouble. He would then come back and retreat and join his friends in midfield.
And still not cause trouble. And I think that really was what we kept seeing really over and over and over again on the rewatch was you could pause it at any given moment, and the United States were in the shape they wanted to be in, and you really would be hard-pressed to find a Brazilian who was covered, who was marked, who couldn't get the ball, maybe with a little bit of difficulty, but generally speaking, there were always 3 and 4 options for Brazil. And so even though the United States was theoretically doing what they wanted, it was also sort of allowing Brazil to do exactly what they wanted.
Because there's a good news, bad news to this, right? The good news is that it doesn't really matter that specific Brazilian players weren't specifically man-marked, because that's not what we were trying to do.
No.
But part of what we were trying to do instead was close down the space, like we said.
Yeah.
And in the end, I think of it as we got our math wrong and we just didn't close down enough space. Or maybe we underestimated or overestimated how much space Brazil needed to operate in.
I think that.
And what we kept seeing...
Whichever one of the words it is.
Well, yeah, I can't quite work it out. But it's as if we got the calculations wrong for going to the moon and overshot the moon, we're like, oh, this was way off.
That'd be slightly more catastrophic, but yeah.
More expensive, right?
Yeah.
and more damaging to American pride.
Yeah.
But what we kept seeing multiple times when we rewatched this is the US in shape and then all kinds of Brazilian players. Like it starts with Casemiro in defensive midfield, Fred running off for him like centre right midfield, Coutinho, Neymar, Firmino, and Douglas Costa. So all the attackers basically would position themselves between Americans, right? So if you had a group of 4 Americans in shape, Firmino or someone would find a space that was not next to any of them and just equidistant between a lot of different players.
Yeah, and with that, I'm going to say, like, this was the most...
It's like a net that was too big to catch any fish in it.
Sure.
Yeah?
Sure.
Right, there we go.
I mean, if you were like, yeah, we got the nets out, that'll be good enough. Yeah. But I would say, like, this game was the most I've ever felt like one of those Nike commercials, like the Brazil Nike commercials where they're all just doing whatever they want in the locker room.
Yeah.
It felt like this was the first time I've ever seen that on the field. And I mean that sincerely.
Like MetLife was the airport.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, more so that, like, I never saw Brazil look too bothered. And I don't mean that, like, they didn't care and whatever. I just mean that if they didn't get the ball to feet, it was sort of like, okay, it'll probably come eventually. Like, I'll recycle or I'll step away or I'll check away and check back in. And you just didn't see that sort of frantic gesturing to feet and that demand to get the ball in a way that it wasn't like they weren't interested. It was just more so...
It came too easy. That's
it was
why.
a very relaxed sort of, okay, I'm not going to get the ball, but he will get the ball, and then I'll get the ball from that guy. And, like, you just didn't see that frantic movement that you might see if Brazil were under pressure. And it felt like they were just sort of like, okay, I'll sit behind you if you want to try to block that space, but then Fred, almost always, will step 2 feet to the left or 2 feet to the right. Casemiro will turn with the one touch and play me the ball, and now I've bypassed 6 players at once.
I'd like to give a specific example of when that happened,
Sure.
but there must be like 7 times that specifically Casemiro just stepped between the other midfielders, received the ball from the centre-backs, and 1 or 2 touches he would lay it onto Fred, who was between the rest of the midfielders.
Yep.
And the Brazil were constantly between US lines, both horizontally and vertically.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, then, I think I will say that it wasn't as bad of an individual performance from the U.S. because I think
there's no one midfielder who is at fault for doing that.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, I think at various moments, lots of players were at fault for doing lots of things, but I think you have to look back then at the game plan not working and the failure to adjust. I would say when they did adjust and did look better is when Kellen Acosta came on. And I think you saw him be a little bit more aggressive. He did a lot more running and a lot more space filling where he would put somebody under pressure, but as soon as that pass clearly wasn't on to the player he was marking, he dropped back into space and found somebody else to mark and moved around a lot. And it felt like that was when Brazil did struggle to find options.
It was a pleasant reminder of why we were excited about Kellen Acosta in the past and why he shouldn't necessarily be behind, say, Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie in our mental pecking orders of favourite young American central midfielders. I think it was just that McKennie and Adams have become the sort of the shiny new thing, and we still love them both, right? I think we're very well documented on the show doing so. But it's also worth remembering that Acosta could maybe even do that job a little better, or at least did tonight.
Potentially.
Could maybe add the caveat that Brazil had also weakened their own team.
Yeah, they'd made a couple changes at that point.
By the time Acosta and Weah came on.
Yeah.
So there's that as well.
And again, I am a big proponent of the idea that if players are constantly doing the same thing, at a certain point, it becomes not a choice they're making, but a thing they've been told to do.
Yeah.
And I think at one point you suggested that, like, do they just think that if there's players behind them, they don't matter anymore? Because routinely McKennie and Adams would kind of step into space and think like, oh, I've got this lane covered, and I'm sure somebody behind me is marking the person who's behind me, and it would usually be Fred, and it would usually be Fred moving a couple feet, and then he was open. And it did just feel like they had been told, don't worry about what's behind you. Will Trapp will cover. The center backs will step forward. We're not worried about that. We want to make sure that they can't find the option that they want right away. And so I don't even fault Weston McKennie or Tyler Adams that much. I don't think either one had a very good game, but I don't think they had a particularly terrible game either.
They each had very good moments, right? Adams had that move at the top of the box, for example. He had some good lively moments. But yeah, I think we're both saying the same thing, right? Essentially, the midfield defensively did not function.
Yeah.
And maybe one thing, I think you hit on this during the game, is in some ways Julian Green and Paul Arriola are to blame, the left mid and right mid, not because they were bad or did anything particularly wrong, but because they didn't stay compact, narrow, along with the rest of the midfielders, and then make us like a little tough box that you have to, or like a jungle that you have to try and hack your way through. Instead, I think because maybe they just see the guys who are out on the wings. Like suddenly if Neymar's way out on the left wing, maybe it's just too scary for Paul Arriola to be like, all right, I'm going to leave him out there and just focus on holding my space in central midfield, right? Or right centre midfield. If you see the ball go near Neymar, you're sort of like, I better get over there and do something. And then we start getting pulled out of shape.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the difference because Brazil routinely did not care if the ball went wide. If DeAndre Yedlin got the ball wide, that was fine. They would move over and cover that, or they would wait for him to try to run down the line and block it off. They did that several times.
Yep.
And so because of that, you didn't have them trying to mark like the player out wide, but also cover a zone, but also be aware of another player. And suddenly you're doing three things. Yeah, if you're the Brazil player, it's just mark my area, cover my space, and then we'll deal with it as it comes.
How about this for a theory? What the US midfield was asked to do, which is sort of, hold space, is not the best use of Tyler Adams or Weston McKennie's skill set. Because they both like to essentially run around, chase things down, make things happen. But when you ask them to tamp that down a little bit, you still get it expressed in small bursts of like little sprints of 5 yards here, 5 yards there, and you end up with a team that just gets pulled out of shape. And Will Trapp wasn't helping either because he wasn't doing much beyond sitting in that number 6 central midfield spot.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely part of it. Everything you just said is accurate. But the other thing, if you extend it further, is if they're doing that, and I agree this isn't the way you play with them, because what happens when you win the ball back? What's the plan then? And the reality is if Tyler Adams wins that ball back, he's got Bobby Wood ahead of him theoretically. He's got his 2 outside midfielders or wingers tucked inside to help with numbers in the middle. They don't have anywhere to go. And the United States, it felt like, despite routinely not having anywhere to go, the instructions were go as fast as you can up the field as quickly as you can. And so then it was, all right, turn and play the ball into space. Turn the play the ball into Bobby Wood's feet. Bobby Wood then has to try to do something. And it seems like if you're going to do this system where you sit off, you've got to have a lot of fluidity from your attackers, and you've got to have a lot of technical ability on the ball. And again,
you've got to be Brazil, basically.
I mean, yeah, a little bit. Like just think about, like, not even necessarily, you don't have to have a Neymar who can do amazing things with the ball, but just think how often Bobby Firmino, I'm going Bobby for purposes of this conversation, would drift all the way to the far touchline, but then somebody else would automatically fill that space, but then he would recycle back in, and suddenly there'd be a 1-2 combo between a guy who was just 30 yards outside, but suddenly was back inside. But then sometimes he would hold that space out wide, and so then an American would drift out there. And like just the way they kept kind of that fluidity of movement, it really caused
without
the U.S.
ever
problems.
being out of shape.
Exactly. And you flip it around, and the U.S. just couldn't do that same thing. And again, this is where I go back to my initial point in the beginning is like, and I'm not saying they should because they're not Brazil. Yeah. But if you're going to set yourself up to play that way, you're kind of automatically going to fail because you cannot play that way.
Yep. Okay, so to finish on negativity before we move on to a couple of positives.
Aren't we going straight to the Brazil goals?
No, I want to put some positives in between to cheer us up and to keep our listeners listening. I think essentially what we're saying is we can see what the plan was. Yeah. It was this like 4-4-2 when Brazil had the ball in defence and we could maybe put a little bit of pressure. 4-1-4-1 once they cross the line and we hold the space and just don't let them play through and hopefully win it back. And then counter-attack somewhat quickly when we do get the ball back. And the problem is we just did none of those things well. So it was a team with a plan that just couldn't quite execute the plan either through like a failing of communication and team, because there was a lot of like, I thought you had him, no, you had him. There was a lot of those inquests after moves had happened. Or just maybe Brazil were too good and figured things out too quickly.
I mean, but I feel like I'm not sure why we're doing this, but we seem to be doing a thing that we would do otherwise, which is like that's the fault of Dave Sarachan, no?
Yeah, I mean, yes.
I mean, if that were Bruce Arena or Jurgen Klinsmann, I feel like we would be tearing them apart for the team not executing the game plan. And I genuinely don't know why we're not, other than because it feels like Dave Sarachan isn't going to be the coach much longer, or it won't be after this year.
So it's not worth focusing too much on his tactical
I think
setup.
It's not worth. It's not a dead horse, but it's like it's not worth kicking a guy when he's down because he's probably not going to be there. We don't expect him to be the long-term manager.
Yeah, you're right.
And so it just kind of is what it is.
I would say, from my perspective, because we don't expect him to be the coach long-term, I almost like try not to overthink what he's doing. Yeah. Because why? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So with that said, maybe let's talk about some positive things in a moment, and then we can talk about the goals. But first, we should probably have a word from today's sponsor. All
right. Today's show is sponsored by a returning sponsor.
Yeah, they are.
From Brooklyn's first sneaker company. Great sneakers. You may remember them from last year.
I remember them. I'm wearing them right now.
Are you? Hang on. I'm going to look into the table.
I can lift them up if you want.
Yeah,
yes,
you are.
Yes, I am.
Hello.
I am wearing my old school white pair, but I do have the black high tops now because winter is coming. You know, you got to be able to deal with inclement weather.
The Royale high top Neros.
There we go.
I believe is what you got.
Thank you for knowing things. Well done, my friend. Well done, my friend.
Well, I studied the page carefully when ordering my new ones.
Yeah, and they're nice. They're I think my favorite thing. My wife lived in Italy for a year. She's a bit of a shoe snob. When they came out of the box,
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, she is. When they came out of the box, like we were in the kitchen together, and I just saw her sniff, and she was like, "That's really good leather." Like she could smell it. I was like, "All right, she knows these things." She was impressed. It's nice Italian leather. I'll say that.
So Greats is based in Brooklyn, but the shoes are made in Italy.
There you go.
Actually, unfortunately, I don't have the name of the region in front of me, but there's a famous shoemaking region. That's why your wife could spot the quality.
The mozzarella region, I believe.
That it is not. And you know it is not.
I know it is not, but I do know that I love my Greats. I appreciate like the heaviness of them as well. It speaks to like quality of design in my mind. That
not like face-off style.
No, not like that, but more like Jurassic Park. Heavy means expensive. Like that's what it means. Like high quality leather. Like you don't just have that kind of. You know what I mean? When like you can tell the shoe is flimsy. This is going to break in like 2 months.
That is not the case with Greats because they are great.
They sure are.
So they are not cheap, and I mean that in two senses of the word. They are. Not unaffordable, but they're not cheap. But they're also, like you said, when you take them out of the box, you know that it's something quality.
You sure do. But
you can get 15% off your first purchase at greats.com if you use the discount code TSS. So it's TSS for 15% off your first purchase at greats.com.
So thank you to Greats for sponsoring today's episode of the Total Soccer Show. Thank you to Greats for, making me feel like I can pull off white shoes. Not a thing I would have said otherwise, but right now I'm cool with it.
Speaking of Greats, did we have any great positives from this game? I know you and I have watched and talked, and I think we both have at least one thing that we're happy with from this game, from a US perspective.
I had like 3 things within one thing because I really enjoyed Miazga and Brooks together.
Things can be 3 things?
Yeah, basically, because I enjoyed Miazga and Brooks as a partnership. I enjoyed Matt Miazga's 1v1 defending and a lot of what he did there, and I really enjoyed John Brooks' distribution. Matt Miazga's as well, but John Brooks especially, I felt like he was the one who was willing to try those long diagonals to set up some counterattacks. He was one who was willing to play 20, 30-yard passes into feet of players in tight spaces.
I forgot how much I missed seeing him do that for the US national team. He even does, not quite Busquets, but he puts a little bit of disguise in it, right? Where you think he's passing one way, but then he opens up a bit and he finds a little gap and gets it into the feet of Julian Green is a move I'm thinking of.
One time he surprised Paul Arriola with that exact play. He looked like he was dribbling out wide and then suddenly played this like darting 30-yard pass that Arriola eventually settled.
All right, at least we got there. We got there. And also, I know that we'll talk about the goal probably in a second. Miazga is somewhat at fault for the first goal. But for the most part, when the Brazilians carved their way through the US midfield, through doing that weird the fishing net is too big, they found some space and here we go thing, so many Brazilian attacks eventually crashed against the rocks that were Brooks and Miazga. I know that's dramatic, but I really mean that. They got all the way to Brooks and Miazga. And I'm thinking, to give one example, there's Miazga one-on-one versus Neymar, and he really early on, right, before the first goal even, and Miazga gets a foot in, gets a tackle in, stops Neymar.
Yeah, that was inside the first 3 minutes, I think.
It was, and there were a couple of those from Miazga, more than a couple of those from Brooks. So I think we really have found our defensive partnership. How about that?
I think so. I mean, barring injury and unless one of them has a significant downturn in form, I think absolutely, because this game...
If you didn't just name the 2 things that are going to happen to Brooks and Miazga. Yeah, knock the wood. Listeners, if you're near wood, knock it.
This game genuinely could have been 6-0. Like, it really could have without those 2. If it had been another center-back pairing, say maybe the one from Trinidad, I think there's a lot of problems here. Because even that one in the first couple minutes... It's Neymar running at maybe kind of a tight angle, but it's still Neymar running at you. And if you're less confident, have less self-belief in your ability, maybe you just stick a leg out, maybe it's a penalty inside 3 minutes. And instead, it's just smart decision-making from the 2 center backs. I believe it was Miazga in that situation. Might have been Brooks. But either way, it was a routine scenario of, Brazil found their way through. Miazga's there. Brazil found their way through again. Brooks is there this time.
It's as if they were the 2 calm people and everybody else was running around a little bit panicked.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate way to summarize things. So I think that was a positive for me. We mentioned him very briefly, but I really was really surprised by how much I enjoyed Kellen Acosta.
All right.
Because him coming on when he did, with the game being what it was, it felt sort of a little bit like damage control and a little bit like, oh, he's going to kind of sit and maybe just try to clog more passes. And instead, he felt very aggressive in his approach at a time when that was needed.
He looked to me like the second draft, the revised, improved second draft of what McKennie and Adams had been doing in midfield for the first, 50, 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, I think Kellen Acosta probably benefits from sitting on the bench, listening to the coaching staff saying, oh, no, this is going wrong, this is going wrong, this is going wrong.
Yeah, I mean, and again, Kellen Acosta's putting, Arthur under pressure.
Arthur and Paqueta.
Yeah, and not, say,
Fred
Coutinho.
And Coutinho. So
it is.
There's that as well.
A little different.
Welcome back, Kellen Acosta.
Yeah, it was good to see him back. And I mean, again, it's worth noting, the first thing he does is put pressure on and then step and then put more pressure on, and Brazil passed the ball out of bounds. That it was a possibility for the United States to apply that pressure and cause problems.
Was it a possibility? I think I warned you this question was coming before we started recording. Was it a possibility for the US to do that kind of pressure for the whole game and maybe not get into the situation where we're having to let Fred run in behind us all the time?
I mean this in the nicest possible way. This U.S. team, no. Because, again, it's Dave Sarachan, an interim manager, who's been his approach thus far appears to have been, I want to give lots of players, lots of opportunities, try different things, experiment with different things, and I think his approach overall has been, now we've got this foundation of lots of new players coming in, lots of different approaches and perspectives, and then we see what happens.
Yep.
And I don't think that lends itself to, we have to play this very specific style, a high press system. Look at the way Klopp does it and Guardiola does it with Man City. It is, everybody has to know exactly what they're doing all the time. It has to be fully briefed and fully aware. You have to have really good relationships, and everybody has to understand how everybody else plays. I don't think you can do that in this short of a time period.
Now I've said it out loud, I'd even say if Germany did this to Brazil, you would say, oh, this is risky stuff from Germany. Because Brazil, even though the one thing we're thinking about with Acosta, it worked and Brazil played it out of bounds. We did that for 90 minutes. One, we get tired. Two, eventually they cut through us. Right?
I mean, and you had those.
It would have been 5-0.
You had those moments, I can't remember when it was, so I apologize. But we were really excited that the United States, it was in the first 15 minutes or so. They really did. They applied pressure from a goal kick, and you saw Brazil struggle a little bit. Where it's oh, that guy's on me. I got to play this quickly.
Before the first goal, yes, it was pretty good, right?
And they still played their way out of it. That's the thing. Is it was still well done from the United States, but it is the case that with a team as talented as Brazil, as stacked as Brazil. If one of your players is 5 yards late step into somebody, it's kind of blown. Because
it's got to be like a machine, right?
Yeah.
Everything has got to be in place at exactly the right time. Otherwise, the machine breaks down.
So I think, to go back to your question, I think what
Neymar dances on your broken machine.
Yeah, he'll do that. Or rolls around on it, one or the other. I think it's possible they could have done it intermittently, which is what I think they were trying to do.
Yes.
But I think I think it could have been 10 minutes, now we set off for 5, but then we're up for 5, but now we're back for 10, but now we're up for 5 again. And you kind of keep Brazil on their toes. And I think that was the game plan. But I think you, Daryl, pointed out that the thing that maybe slowed that game plan down a little bit was the fact that Brazil scored, and it did seem to kind of deflate the U.S. for a good 10 to 15 minutes.
There is I know this sounds odd to say about professional players, but there is a weird amount of enthusiasm you need to implement a system.
Absolutely.
Right? You've got to have full belief in it, and it just makes you automatically do it when you really believe that it's going to work. And I think, once the bubble gets burst a little bit, you're just a second slow to do this or that or whatever, and suddenly there's a cascade effect and things start breaking down.
Yeah. I can't even find a good analogy because it's after 1 o'clock in the morning. But it's just, we've talked about this before. If you have this system set up and you have to do A, B, C, and D, and E, F, G all the way through, and as long as all of those things work, it's going to be, A failed? Now we're in trouble. And it is the case that if you're set up to look, we're gonna press them, then we're gonna sit off a little bit, we're gonna frustrate them, we're gonna force them into making mistakes and play the wrong way, then we'll get our chances, then we'll take them, then we'll be on the front foot for 10 minutes, then we'll press them again. All that sounds great, but as soon as you go down 1-0, that entire system is predicated upon don't concede, otherwise Brazil can now do whatever they want and we have to go at them.
I agree.
Once you do that, it kind of takes the wind out of your sails.
All right, back to positives.
Yeah.
I thought Tim Weah actually did pretty well in his 20, 30 minutes.
Whenever you say actually, it's always a good sign.
Because I think it's worth remembering this kid is 18 years old, is on the fringes basically of the first team squad at PSG, does not have that much professional experience, and he went up against Brazil and actually looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Right? There's the Will Trapp shot that I think Alisson has to save. That comes from Tim Weah on the left, dribbles at, I don't know if Fabinho's still the right back at that point, makes the smart choice when there's no space to cut back inside, drifts away from a couple of people. They crowd towards him in a way that Brazilian players don't normally look scared of American attackers.
No.
They looked worried enough about him that they started to crowd towards him, and then he released the ball to Will Trapp, who was open. So just to see Tim Weah looking threatening on the international stage.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he could do that all the time against top opposition, but he did it that one time, and that gave me a moment of joy.
I mean, yeah, but it's his pressure that forces Marquinhos to play the ball out of bounds.
Yeah.
I think as soon as he came on, he made like a 20-yard sprint back to get the ball, turned, didn't see anything, turned it back, played back to a center back, and then made a 20-yard sprint upfield. I wasn't as impressed by that. We watched it a couple more times, and you kind of taught me into the idea that, like, no, he's just trying. He's just trying to do something to get the game moving.
Yeah, because it had, even though it literally went nowhere, and you could have done the same thing at half pace and without the little move that he did and got the same result, it just set a marker of, I'm here to do something.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I mean...
Sometimes you need that.
Sometimes you need that. That's very well said, because you don't always need a Clint Dempsey trying stuff. But sometimes you need a Timothy Weah trying stuff.
Yeah, just to lift everybody up.
And just a little passing of the torch. That's all I'm saying.
One other thing that is weirdly a positive is after Anthony Robinson, the left back, got burned by Douglas Costa for the first goal, which I guess we'll start analysing in just a second,
sure.
And soon after got nutmegged, he did not fall into what I believe Taylor Rockwell calls a quicksand game.
He did not, and yes, I do. Actually, to be fair, Keanu Reeves in The Replacements called it a quicksand game. Or maybe Gene Hackman did. And then Keanu Reeves explained it. And that was where I first learned that term. But yes, it is the idea that once you start making a mistake, you make another mistake, and then you're thinking about making that mistake and how you can't make another one. And while you're worrying about making another one, you make another one, and suddenly you're having that type of game.
And then, again, to put this in context, if you are Anthony Robinson, you've played, for Everton's Premier League 2 team. You've played in the Championship for Bolton. You've played for Wigan this season. You have never played against Douglas Costa, World Cup winger, Champions League winger. Later in the game, it's Willian, right?
Yeah.
This is the best player you have ever played in a proper game.
Yeah, 100%. And I think with that in mind, like the first goal comes about because he gets burnt because he takes a bad pursuit angle. I think he takes a bad pursuit angle because, one, he's suddenly having to sprint out wide to deal with Douglas Costa. Yeah. But two, I think in the Championship, that ball was pinged out there by, I believe, Thiago Silva. Like, he has to settle that ball and then go at pace. I think in the Championship, maybe it's a looser touch. Maybe Anthony Robinson's pace is just a little bit faster than that player's, but not Douglas Costa.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he could have. You're saying that maybe in the Championship, Costa's touch is a little loose and Robinson wins the ball back, so that pursuit angle is okay. Or when Costa tries to accelerate past him, Robinson possibly catches the Championship player.
So with that in mind, like, could he have done better?
Welcome to the big time.
Exactly. Could he have done better? Absolutely. Welcome to the big time. But it is a little bit of an extenuating circumstance for me. It is still him. Like, this is Anthony Robinson, who very young player, as you said. He's played where he's played. Suddenly he's playing against Neymar.
It's a teenager.
And in the United States, no less. Like, that is still a momentous thing for him, I'm sure, to be playing for the U.S. national team, even if he's already gotten a cap or two. To then be here playing against Neymar and against Douglas Costa and Firmino, like, that's a big deal. And I can see how it would be daunting and that he didn't kind of shrink into that, but still kept trying to get involved in the attack. Still made plays. Because that could
have been, no, Costa's going to murder me every time, and you shrink into yourself, and it wasn't that.
He had a couple tackles before that. He had one very early on. I think inside the first 3 minutes, again, he had two good defensive plays. He made more as the game progressed. He had one great challenge when it looked like, I think Neymar was through. He had a good slide tackle.
That was later in the game,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So I'm with you that I felt like he rebounded well. Not a great game from him. I wouldn't even say a good game from him, but it was certainly a game from him.
And in his career arc, useful game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's one of the things we have to keep thinking about with this team is if we are going to support this US young generation, next generation type thing, then you got to look at some of these as just learning experiences, and hopefully Anthony Robinson is better in the next game against Mexico, is better in the next game after that.
Yeah.
All right. Should we talk about the goals?
We probably should. It's also worth noting that thus far I believe there are 4 names from the starting 11 that we haven't even mentioned yet from the US national team. We have not mentioned DeAndre Yedlin. We have not mentioned Zach Steffen. We have not mentioned Will Trapp or Bobby Wood.
Okay.
And maybe we can do that when we talk about the goals a little bit. Maybe we can do that
Let's maybe go down that list then. So we'll do the other ad after this and before the goals. All right. So Bobby Wood, alone up top for the most part. Tyler Adams sometimes joining him to add some pressure early on. Definitely less so as the game goes on. He ploughed a lone furrow for the most part, right? I think he tried really hard, chased around quite a lot.
Yep.
fought for some balls. Definitely got impatient. Wasn't there one moment where you spotted this? Like he wanted to press even higher. He wanted to press in the Brazil penalty area, and he called McKennie with him, and McKennie basically said, "No, not going. I've been told this is not that game. This is not the game where we
pointed to the man that Bobby Wood had left open and was like, no, you're supposed to be marking him,
Yep.
not running around.
Come back and do your job, basically." And I understand it, right? But then also when we broke, Bobby Wood did not have many people around him. Like quickly got surrounded by Thiago Silva, Marquinhos, Casemiro. I sort of think he basically did as well as a Bobby Wood can do.
Yeah.
Which is both...
that seems like damning with faint praise.
I mean, it is, right? Because if it was... I'm trying to think of like a real good example. If it was Lewandowski up there, maybe it'd be different.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe Lewandowski would bring it down, hold it up, and other people would join him.
It's possible.
That's a bad example after what happened to Poland in the World Cup.
Yeah, a little bit. But I know what you mean.
You take my point there, right?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm still at a loss for, like, I guess I can't really say, like, oh, you got to blame the coach for setting them up in this way and then criticize Bobby Wood, but maybe I'm going to do that. I don't know. It's just, I feel like we have this conversation a lot about Bobby Wood, about how he tries really hard and he runs really hard and he does a lot and he works and puts in tackles, and that's great, but there is a time when you got to score a goal, and I don't think this was it. I won't say that. Like, I don't put this on him. I don't put the lack of goals on him at all. But it's just, if anything, it's more so me just being frustrated because I feel like we still haven't ever seen Bobby Wood in a U.S. team that's beneficial to him or helps him get goals. Like, he's had a few goals here and there. He's had moments where it seemed like he was the real deal.
And there was the run where it was Altidore and Wood were the two strikers, but we essentially sacrificed a midfield partner for Michael Bradley to do that, and we paid the price.
We sure did.
Yeah.
So it's just I guess I'm just saying, like, I still feel like there are opportunities for Bobby Wood, and he's a good player. It just, how often have you and I had this conversation where it's like, well, he made some good runs, though, and he worked really hard, and at a certain point, it just feels a little maddening. I'm sure it feels more maddening for him.
To get a bigger picture, philosophical maybe, isn't this just the plight of the US striker when you're up against better opposition, though? Hasn't it always been this way, where we're frustrated with Altidore or whomever it is because they're just not seeing much of the ball because the other team has the ball?
I don't think so, but I think that's because, again, Bobby Wood has scored goals for the United States. I'm not trying to represent it as though he hasn't. But he hasn't had that, like, run of form. Like, remember when Josie Altidore, like, could not stop scoring, both for, like, club and country? I think that was with AZ. Like, I just feel like we haven't had that run from Bobby Wood.
It wasn't with Sunderland.
It certainly was not. And again, that's not even necessarily saying, like, and that's because Bobby Wood isn't good or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But it's just, it feels like we're still waiting for the kind of same thing, and it does make me wonder if a different striker maybe could do that, or if we should just learn from our mistakes and stop putting him in a position where, it hasn't really worked for you before, but we're going to do it again and hope it does? Like, you would expect him to try something else.
I think the thing that doesn't work for him is that he's a willing runner, so he often gets tasked with that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So if you're the one in the office that's always willing to go to the store, eventually people will just keep asking you to go to the store.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. And it's also like...
And you'll miss out on that promotion because you'll be at the store when the big thing happens.
Yeah, but it's also like but then you get in trouble. I'm going to continue this analogy. Okay. That's what that was about. Because it's almost like, if you're the one who's willing to go to the store, but then every time you go to the store, the boss comes by and is like, is Daryl not here again? And, like, that's the other thing, is like with Brazil, if Firmino goes wide, somebody else fills that space, Brazil will keep the possession, move it around.
Someone keeps Bobby Wood's desk wall.
Yeah, Firmino drifts back into the middle, and then there's another opportunity. For the U.S., it feels like Bobby Wood sprints wide to open up space, turns around, the U.S. has lost the ball, and now he's 80 yards away from the play, not looking like he's at his desk.
So in the Brazil office, they're like, oh, Firmino's good at delegating.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. What a self-sacrifice here. He moves his desk so that others can thrive.
All right, we spent a little while on Bobby Wood. Yeah. You had some other players to talk about that we hadn't talked about.
We didn't mention Zach Steffen, and I don't think I think that's indicative of the game. He didn't do anything particularly wrong, in my opinion. But
do you know what? I haven't thought about the Firmino goal. I haven't thought about Zach Steffen's role in it.
I don't think he has much of one because it's an inch-perfect cross from Douglas Costa, and he's just trying to get himself in the right position, but there's no way he's ever going to make a save on Firmino. We'll talk about why that might be in a minute. And then for the penalty, I mean, it's kind of humiliating just because of the way Neymar takes it, and he does that little, like, dance, and then just gentle pass as Steffen dives the wrong way. But you can't fault a goalkeeper for not saving a penalty. He does have that one save on Neymar in a 1v1 that does have to be cleared off the line by Matt Miazga, but that Steffen gets a hand to it at all, or maybe a foot, or maybe both. is what slows it down from going in the back of the net. So it was an okay game, but I can't say, like, yep, Zach Steffen cemented his role, but I also wouldn't say, as maybe some people did, that Brad Guzan is definitely in with a shout now. That seemed a bit hyperbolic.
Why don't you just at Stu Holden?
What? Who's that?
Who else did you list that we hadn't talked about? Julian Green?
No, we talked mentioned him very quickly.
Yeah.
No, it was DeAndre Yedlin, and it was Will Trapp.
Okay. DeAndre Yedlin.
Mm-hmm.
DeAndre Yedlin, I was very disappointed with his contributions going forward.
Yep.
There was a lot of the couple of times that we already talked about where he tried to put the ball one side of Luis and go the other side,
yep.
and Luis just took the correct angle and killed that dead.
Yep.
And there was another time where he got forward and I think just tried to accelerate and cross and just hit the defender.
He dribbled in and it launched a counterattack, yeah.
Yeah.
That maybe led to that Steffen save?
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but there was definitely a very clear opportunity where he put his hand in the air like, yep, that's me.
And I think Yedlin was also very susceptible to the Brazilian plan to sort of stand equidistant between potential defenders and nobody quite knew who to mark anyone. So we ended up with a couple of times where Yedlin trying to cover. Wasn't there one time when Yedlin went sprinting out to cover Neymar because Neymar was open because Areola was over covering someone else, and then Coutinho.
Felipe Luis.
Right. But then Coutinho just ran into the space that Yedlin vacated. Where I don't want to put all of that on Yedlin, but he was definitely often part of a system-wide breakdown when he went running out to try and meet things.
Yes. I agree with all that. I'll put a little more blame on him because there were also the moments. There's the late in the game, there's like the Neymar scoop pass in for, I believe, Coutinho that he chest down, dribbles around, and then squares back to Neymar. And Neymar's shot is either, I think it's blocked or he can't quite get it off. But it's Neymar who scoops it. It's Yedlin who's standing next to Neymar when that happens. And then we can't really see from the camera angle, but it very much appears to be that Yedlin is sort of like, oh, wow, that was a really good pass. I wonder what happens here. And doesn't even notice that.
How did I get these tickets?
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't even notice that Neymar has gone hurtling past him. And then very, very quickly it's like, uh-oh, that's not good. And tries to make up for it. But it's Neymar. He's fast too.
Oh, dear.
So it was just those sorts of moments from Yedlin that it was. At the end of it, like it was a Yedlin game. Like he did some stuff okay, but he still tried to rely on his pace to trigger counterattacks as opposed to technical ability or knowing when to try to go forward. And it felt like they knew how to deal with his pace.
They did. Right?
They said early on, the commentators did that Chichi had a dossier on Anthony Robinson and how to deal with him and his pace. I have to believe that dossier was also applicable to DeAndre Yedlin.
Yep.
Knowing, hey, look, he's going to bomb forward. If he takes that touch, step across, he'll run into you. Maybe it's a foul on you, but either way, it's not him blowing by you.
And Robert Chimova's brother.
There you go.
So to end on a high for DeAndre Yedlin, because I think I've just realised we'll definitely talk about Will Trapp with the second goal. Okay. So let's save that. To end on a high with DeAndre Yedlin, did you catch? Oh, you told me about this. I've gone and found the video. After he was adjudged to have fouled Neymar, he was seen telling the referee, did you watch the World Cup?
Yeah.
Which I think is a great, if nothing else, that is the line of the night. That is magnificent stuff from DeAndre Yedlin.
Yeah. The implication being he's a diver, you know that.
Yes,
yeah.
It's brilliant.
All right, so we'll talk about Will Trapp. We'll talk about the goals just in a moment, but first we've got a sponsor.
It's Grip 6.
It's Grip 6.
If you're long-time listeners, you will remember Grip 6 belts. They are made in the USA. In Utah. They are unlike, I really mean this, they are unlike any belt I have seen before or since.
Agreed.
I want to say they're unique.
They're certainly unique.
Yes.
And I would say, again, didn't plan this, didn't look at who the sponsors were today. I am wearing my Grip 6 belt. And
really?
there is a reason why. It is not just because I'm always wearing my Grip 6 belt. I am. But it's because...
it's because every morning you try to dress yourself head to toe in sponsors.
I mean, that's the plan. That's the dream, baby. That's the dream. One day we'll get sponsored by a car company. I will drive my sponsored car to work. Until then, I will say... it's like the woven belt with the belt that, what do they say, the buckle that bites on like 1,000 badgers and holds in place.
Yep.
But it's super lightweight, and it really, like, I don't ever want to forget the fact that wearing a belt when we sit as long as we do covering these games, it starts to dig it. It doesn't feel very comfortable sometimes. Grip 6 never had that problem.
Yep. They are low profile.
Yeah.
Low profile and lightweight, but...
And badger bite.
Guaranteed for life. How about that?
Guaranteed. Goddamn tea? Is that what it is?
Specifically not that.
Okay.
Specifically not blasphemous.
Okay.
I think it's maybe just the guarantee.
Okay.
I think it's like suggestive of the blasphemy part, but deliberately not doing it.
All right.
Yeah. So you go. Grip 6, not a blasphemous company.
But they are an American company. Everything's American made by American workers.
It is, and they're they are much more secure than the American defense.
Yes, this is definitely true. You've been working on that one, haven't you? Your listeners, Daryl is very pleased by that one.
The amount of pleased you can see on my face is that I just thought of it and I'm really happy with it.
There you go.
You can tell by the awkward phrasing as well.
A little bit.
You can also, they sent us samples recently, you can also get a Grip 6 belt with the Total Soccer Show logo.
That you can.
Lasered onto the buckle. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Are we entirely sure how you do that?
It's not super straightforward, but what you would have to do is if you go in the bottom left corner of their website on a desktop, grip6.com, grip and the number 6.com, bottom left corner, it says custom order.
Can it be a laptop?
Yes, because it's not 1997.
I'm helpful.
But almost. Bottom left corner, you can click custom order, and then there'll be a thing where you have to upload a file of an image that you want put onto your buckle. This is if you want to do the Total Soccer Show thing, right? I think it costs an extra $10. Email us, contact@totalsoccershow.com, ask us for the logo. We will give it to you. And then you can give it to Grip 6 and they will put it on there for you if you want it on there.
If you want it on there.
Yeah. I will say it looks nice without it because it's sort of logo free. The Grip 6 logo is on the reverse, so it's not showing. So it has a very sort of literally low profile, but also, fashion-wise low profile, right? Not too showy. But if you want to also get something showy and buckly, you can get the Total Soccer Show logo.
You can. Yeah. I think you got one in orange, right? You got an orange belt buckle with that one on there? Yeah. So if you want to get something showy with the TSS logo on it, you can. And if you wanted to get, say, 20% off?
20% off at grip6.com. Use the discount code TSS. TSS at grip6.com will get you 20% off your order.
Thank you to Grip 6 for sponsoring today's episode of the Total Soccer Show. And thank you to Grip 6 as well for having a word in it. I'm very used to Daryl Grove being English. I talk to him every single day. And thus, I feel like there are certain words that I just kind of hear as, Daryl says them. And I forget the beauty and majesty of a British accent until you said, what's the thing that you can get custom made?
The buckle?
Yeah, you saying buckle, I was like, oh, he's English. That's right. I don't know. I say
what's the incorrect way of saying it?
There's no incorrect way other than, I guess, what you said, because the right way is to say buckle.
It's the same word.
No, I'm joking now because I feel like the joke that you were about to make was that Americans say it wrong because we're American.
Oh, I already did that.
There we go.
As Jimmy Carr said, this is how it's supposed to sound.
Sure.
Should we get back to the soccer?
We've had so many debates about this, listeners. I showed him linguistic reports. Daryl won't have
things
it.
Things can be two things.
Yeah.
We can both be right.
I can be right, you can be wrong. That can be the two things.
Well, shall we get to the goals?
If we must.
Okay, so the first goal comes in the 11th minute or so. Mm-hmm. It is Roberto Firmino on the end of a Douglas Costa cross. Mm-hmm. We've already sort of talked about it, but what happens is the US back four is quite narrow. Anthony Robertson is tucked in alongside his centre-backs. The ball goes out to Douglas Costa, and sort of like we talked about this very early at the top of the show, the US sort of panics when people are receiving the ball on the wings. Yeah. And so Anthony Robertson goes charging out there at full speed. Yeah. Right?
And that's not even the mistake necessarily, because if you're going to charge out there, you can charge out there. It's that he takes a very direct line of approach where he is running straight at Douglas Costa. And I think maybe thinks he's taken a better angle because I believe when we rewatched it, you can see Anthony Robbins sort of point to Julian Green oh, he's going to cut it back because that's what he did in the first minute. Yep. He forced Douglas Costa to turn and play back. Yep. So I think he thinks, oh, I'm going to do that again. Julian Green will be there. We'll win it. We'll go.
And for those who, for people who maybe haven't played a lot of soccer, the way that works is if Anthony Robinson had got sort of in front of Douglas Costa, so Douglas Costa could make no more forward progress down the line, the only option Costa would have would be to turn around and play it backwards, probably to his right back, Fabinho, right? I'm guessing. That's what he was telling Julian Green was about to happen. Yeah. And the physics were off, right?
Yeah, because basically...
This is another one where he missed the moon.
Yeah, he doesn't realize where he is. He's taking a bad angle. He's not actually goal side. He's more so like center circle side. Yeah. And that allows Douglas Costa to basically get that run down the line to begin with. And then at a certain point, Douglas Costa is just very fast. And even if Anthony Robinson is fast himself, it's tough to catch up.
He's trying, right? He's trying really hard to catch up. But again, as we talked about, it's Douglas Costa.
And Douglas Costa does do the thing. Again, we'll talk about it later. I want to get to the second goal. He just cuts in just a teeny little bit. Not that he comes in at an angle like Arjen Robben to shoot, but just enough that it makes Anthony Robinson have to adjust his pursuit run because otherwise there's going to be a tangle of legs. He's going to be brought down.
Oh, is this the thing where you keep your body between the ball, which you have at your feet, and the defender who's behind you so they can't get around you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sort of like the Ron Swanson rotating desk.
Yes.
So Douglas Costa has a target. He puts in a really nice cross picks out Firmino for a pretty easy finish, right? I think it's only fair to say that Matt Miazga probably should have done better and done a better job tracking Firmino into the box. This is the only Matt Miazga mistake of the game as far as I'm concerned, but he definitely makes it.
Yeah, he absolutely does. He's with Firmino. He doesn't lose Firmino. It's not a battle of pace where he just can't keep up with him. I think it's just that in the moment, Miazga realizes, John Brooks has gone wide. Someone's got to get to that near post. When he starts making the run to the near post, I think you spotted, the ball has already been crossed.
Yeah.
So maybe he just misreads the angle or misreads what's going to happen and thinks, it's going to be delivered low and near. I'll get there and clear the ball.
Yeah.
And instead, it is perfectly placed for Firmino to finish.
My guess is that Miazga thinks, I've already lost him that side, like behind me, so my best chance is to get to the ball before the ball gets to him, but then he just can't get there.
Yeah.
And I also think if you rewatch this, Firmino comes from not too deep, right? He's almost level with Miazga and Yedlin the whole time.
Yeah.
Yedlin's occupied with someone out left, probably Neymar. Fair.
Yep.
But what Firmino does is positions himself between Yedlin and Miazga. It's the classic equidistant thing we talked about, right? Where he's one behind Miazga, so that's hard for Miazga to look at the ball, which Douglas Costa has, and to look behind him, where Firmino has.
Yeah.
You can see Miazga checking his shoulder a couple of times, but also just never gets close enough to Miazga to make it easy for Miazga.
Yeah. And with that, I want to say, like, if you're new to soccer, or, like, forgive me if this is very obvious for folks, but I'm going to explain it anyway. It's not just that you're trying to keep a little bit of space between you and the defender because you want there to be space so you can get the ball. The other part of that is that you want, if Daryl's a center back and I'm a center back and Firmino's between us, I don't know what the situation is, but this is what's happened. And Firmino wants it to be that I look...
Our team got promoted a lot.
Yeah, right? But he wants it to be that I look at him and think, Daryl's defending him, I'm good, I'll go do something. And he wants Daryl to look at me and think, Taylor's got him, I'll go do something. Because he's close enough to both of us, but not so far away that, like, he's wide open and thus one of us has to go close him down. And that's what he does routinely and very well.
I'd say all Brazilian players did this a lot throughout this game. Maybe Fred's the chief at this, maybe Casemiro as well, but Firmino does it to Miazga on this goal.
Yeah. And the best, like, watered down version I can explain from personal experience is if I'm playing forward and I'm moving from one center back to the other, as soon as the other center back says, I got him, I stop. Because it's basically like, all right, fine, I'm going to drop back to the other guy now and see if that guy's aware.
Yeah.
And that's the type of thing that I can do at a very basic level. Firmino does it at a much, I'm not, several more muches better level.
It's like you're playing checkers and Firmino is playing for Brazil.
Yes, exactly.
So there's your first goal.
Yeah.
That's how all that happens. Second goal.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. If people heard the quick take, hot take, I think you were very confident that it was a foul by Will Trapp on Fabinho for the penalty kick. I was a little more so-so. I would say after review, and not with cajoling from Taylor, genuinely just my own rewatching, I'm going to say this. There 100% is contact.
Yep.
100% there's contact. It's possibly with Will Trapp's thigh to Fabinho's leg. It may also be with Will Trapp's foot to Fabinho's foot, but there's definitely contact. So we can't accuse Fabinho of going down under no contact.
No.
That's not what happened.
And John Brooks, while he's involved and I think makes Fabinho adjust, it's not about John Brooks. It's about that trailing leg getting clipped. Because if you're running at full speed and it does get a little bit of a bump from Will Trapp's thigh or hip or foot or whatever part of the body it was, running at full speed, just that little clip, if you look, he tries to find purchase with his foot as it comes down, but because it's basically coming down in an unexpected position in relation to what you would expect when you're running at full speed, it's going to make you lose balance and fall. I don't know if I don't think it's intentional because Will Trapp is doing like the hands up, pull back, I'm not trying to foul, but there's still contact, it's still in the box. If it weren't given as a penalty, I would probably say, like, okay, I can see why. And if it is given as a penalty, I can say, okay, yeah, I can see why.
It's never clear-cut, is it? I think
it's certainly not getting overturned on review. I'll say that.
You mean if there was VAR, you don't think they would... I mean, I think you're putting a lot of faith in VAR. It all just depends. It depends who's on the court. You know what I'm saying?
This is true. But either way, there is contact there, and I feel vindicated by that.
Vindicated? Yeah. Right. It's a strong word, but okay.
I've seen the Twitter responses.
So I'll say this. Will Trapp does not protest, maybe just because he's a stand-up kind of guy. And I'm with you in that Fabinho was on his way to goal, or at best, Miazga's going to come over to cover, and then Fabinho's going to square it to who would have been there?
It would be Felipe Coutinho. And then Coutinho, if he doesn't shoot first time, is going to square it to Neymar when Yedlin comes across to cover Coutinho, and then Neymar's going to tap it into the far post.
All of which is to say, regardless of what you feel about the penalty kick, one, we were put in that position where the ref had the opportunity to make, or was forced to make a decision, right? And two, the more important thing for the United States going forward is not whether or not Will Trapp fouled Fabinho. And by the way, if it's on anyone, it's on Will Trapp, not John Brooks, right? I think that's confusion with clearing up. The more important thing is what happened in the build-up, whereby Brazil's right back was able to snake his way between two of our defenders and be on his way to goal.
Yes, and it is a strange thing that in a game where that would always be the talking point is, was it a penalty or was it not? I genuinely could not care less right now because maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. The bigger issue for me is
Can I just congratulate you on your correct use of could not care less?
You can.
Yeah, thank you.
But I would say it was the bigger issue for me was how just like chaotic things were in the lead up to that play. And it was because everyone's getting pulled out of position. No one knows who to track and when. And I will say a big part of it for me is Will Trapp because he's trying. Don't get me wrong. He's trying very hard to do what he's been asked to do, which is protect the middle, hold the middle. But with that, he keeps sort of stepping to somebody and then he's like, oh, no, I'm not supposed to. And then he leaves that person. But I didn't see any level of communication of that guy's coming across, I got to move back. And that was common for most of the U.S. in this game. There wasn't a lot of passing off players and making sure everybody was covered. But in this sequence, he moves and then drops 2 or 3 different people, and no one really picks them up. And that's not necessarily his fault, but it's also not his fault.
And if you want to see the cascading effect of not just Will Trapp, because it's not even like it all starts with him, right? It's just everybody, as far as I can see, it's everybody doing it wrong at the same time, of people half man-marking, half tracking, half stepping to people, then trying to hold position, and then Brazil moving around in between all this, and the absolute chaos this causes, right? Which ends with, does it end with Fabinho playing a 1-2 and Julian Green does not go with Fabinho?
Yes.
Not because Julian Green is lazy, not at all, right? We know he's a sort of hard-working runner, willing to do whatever is necessary. But I think just because there is mass confusion, I think probably for a second he thinks, oh, Fabinho's gone, someone else has got him, for example, is definitely a thing that could have gone through Julian Green's head in that moment.
Yeah. I don't think this analogy is necessarily going to fit, but I'm going to go for it anyway because it's what came to me on the fly. Is if you've ever
just get my popcorn?
Yeah, sure. If you've ever done, I know you're going to say no, I haven't, so it's not going to be helpful. But like if anyone out there has ever like planned a dinner party and you've got all these different foods that are supposed to be ready at the same time, but one of those things is like, oh wait, that's not cooked long enough. Okay, I got to change this. That was supposed to be in the oven now, but that's still in the oven. So let me move this to like, and suddenly you're moving everything around, and at the end you're like, is it good? Is it right? I don't know. And that's what this felt like. It was as soon as Will Trapp.
Why is there such a long line for the bathroom?
Exactly. Yeah, there we go. I guess. I don't know. Is my food going in the bathroom? Is that what's happening? No, it's again, I'm not saying like Will Trapp is the starting point for this because it's who we were talking about, but like as soon as Will Trapp passes that player off, but then nobody knows who needs to get to him. So Anthony Robinson goes, but now because Anthony Robinson left whomever was out wide, now Julian Green goes. But then Julian Green isn't sure, am I supposed to stay here? Do I come back inside? And then somebody else hasn't come over. And it leads to this not even domino effect, but it's just a lot of holes being plugged, and at the end of it you don't know who's plugging hole and where.
And the very best example
which hole, I should have said, not just hole. Yeah.
The very best example of this is that Fabinho starts off in like the few seconds before the penalty kick is awarded. Fabinho starts off being marked by Julian Green, ends being marked by Will Trapp and also John Brooks.
Yep.
Right? Like everyone is passed off too quickly and just the US just can't keep up with the calculations to make it happen. Once again, they miss the moon.
Yeah, and I think they do. And I think in this sequence, there's also a moment when both Weston McKennie and Will Trapp point at, I believe, Fred coming across the middle. Yep. And they both just point at, like, you got him. And then neither one of them really steps to him, and then he just keeps drifting out wide.
Yep. It's the thing we talk about with Miazga and Firmino, right?
Yeah.
This is another great example.
Yeah.
So maybe if this is a weird concept for people, and I'm thinking it may be for some people, right? You can just watch the two goals and see what Firmino does to Miazga, and you can see what Fred and Fabinho and others do to the US in the 30 seconds before the penalty kick is awarded. And that's what the US was struggling with the whole game.
Yep.
Right? The two best examples are probably the goals.
Yeah, 100%. So, with all that said...
Yeah.
First of all, Gyasi Zardes came on. He looked great. Gyasi Zardes is wonderful. I'm saying this so Columbus fans don't get mad at me. Because I have some concerns about Will Trapp as our number 6 going forward. And I say, oh boy, it's late. I'm going to do this. Whatever. I think if that were Michael Bradley doing what Will Trapp did tonight, people would lose their minds. And we would be hearing all about how Michael Bradley can't hold the middle, and he can't track runners, and he doesn't know how to organize a midfield, and he can't stay central, and he doesn't put in tackles. All of that stuff is the stuff that Will Trapp did tonight. It was... I'm not saying
Will
that...
Trapp also hit some very nice diagonal balls out wide, just like Michael Bradley would have done.
Michael Bradley.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not trying to go down this road. I'm not trying to troll people. I'm not trying to have a conversation about Michael Bradley. He's definitely better than Will Trapp and should be there no matter what. But it's a thing of when it's a player that you like, I think it becomes more like, yeah, but he tried really hard. And if it's a player that you are fed up with, and there are plenty of reasons to be frustrated with Michael Bradley, then it's a bad performance. Yeah. And I just felt like there was a little bit of disconnect between those two because I saw a lot of stuff dropping back between the center backs when it maybe wasn't necessary, or kind of standing central and hoping that somebody would play him the ball.
Yeah, he's like the middleman and some Brooks Miazga passes that didn't need a middleman.
Yeah, there was definitely one where he drops
no need for a 25% agency fee on those passes.
No. There's definitely one where like Brooks was going to play it to Miazga, Will Trapp drops in between, gets the ball, dribbles 5 yards up the field, turns and plays it back to Miazga, and then stands there. And it's just like that stuff would have infuriated people if it was Michael Bradley. So I just want to say that, just to say that I'm not saying that it shouldn't be Will Trapp in the future, and I think there's a reason why he has the captain's armband. I think that informs why he doesn't protest about the penalty, because that's, in his mind, not what a captain does.
Yep.
He gets on with it and makes it work. But I think there were certainly deficiencies in his game, or the way he was set up to play his game, that I hope we see rectified either in Mexico or in friendlies going forward.
I think Will Trapp is a fine number 6 if we have most of the ball.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's fair.
When you're going to be definitely on the back foot, or even if you want to be on the front foot and chasing the ball, I don't think Will Trapp is necessarily the best guy to be doing that with.
No. And I would my final point that I would make is maybe a huge grain of salt here, because, again, this is Will Trapp. Just as we said for a lot of these guys, I mean, this is Brazil. This is the Brazil. You know, it's their A-team. There's got to be a little bit of like, whoa, that's Neymar running across. You just got to have that momentary flash. And I'm not, like, it would be very unfair of me.
To see his opposite position, like his mirror position, being Casemiro doing all the Casemiro things at the other end of the field. Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to say like, oh, and therefore he shouldn't play again and Michael Bradley should be in there. I'm definitely not saying that. What I am saying is I saw positive things from him and I saw negative things. And as with any player, the next time I see him play, I hope that some of those negatives have decreased and some of those positives have increased.
Do we have anything else that we want to get to from this game?
I think we've now talked about every player who started.
Because we're pushing an hour or so. All right. How about this question then?
Sure.
The US plays Mexico on Tuesday. I haven't seen it, but Mexico lost 4-1 to Uruguay tonight. I think I'm going to try and find footage. I'm trying to find that whole game and watch it, see what's up.
Luis Suarez had a game, from what I understand.
Did he? All right. So what do we want to see the US do against Mexico? Just in terms of, not even in terms of formation necessarily, because I think you and I are probably going to do a preview on Monday where we'll get deep into that. But just early reactions. Do you want the US to be more aggressive? Do you want the US to be smarter and tighter defensively? Or is it just a whole new game plan because it's Mexico and not Brazil?
From a realistic standpoint, I would say there's a lot of stuff I want the United States to do. I don't think they can do it in this short time frame. Like, I would love for them to be this attacking juggernaut who go at them all the time. I don't know if they can do that, and I don't think it's realistic. So I think what I would like to see them, if they're going to do the same formation and the same approach, I would just like to see it be tighter and executed better, and maybe find a way to support Bobby Wood a little bit more. I would like to see, or whomever starts up top, I would like to see it be, again, like a sort of a slow evolution of what we've learned from the Brazil game. I don't think I want it to be a back three for that game. I think I'd rather see it be, why not, Aaron Long and Parker, and see what they can do.
So we know John Brooks is going home in between, just to make sure that he doesn't get injured again.
It's going to be a back three, isn't it? It's going to be CCV and the Red Bulls.
Do you think that would be weird to see the 4-1-4-1 against Brazil and then a 5-3-2 against Mexico, who's got clearly the weaker opponent out of those two? Because there's that quote from Sarakin about we have two different systems we're going to play in these two games.
Yeah. The only thing I can figure, like, this might be, I don't know if this borders on conspiracy theory, the only thing I can think is that the 4-1-4-1 that we saw tonight, which was more of a 4-4-2.
When defending high up the field.
It felt like it was set up to be a 4-4, Christian Pulisic does what he wants, 1. Like, that's what it felt like, and it felt like Tyler Adams was sort of asked to do a job that Christian Pulisic otherwise would have been given.
That's interesting. I would have assumed that Pulisic would just have done Areola's job.
You would think, but I wonder if maybe they would have tried to give him that freedom to sort of almost do like Neymar, when Neymar would go running forward and then be like, oh, that didn't work, I'll walk back.
Yeah.
And then like everybody else is covering. It felt like maybe Tyler Adams had that. And so I say all that to say maybe they were going to try to do the 4-1-4-1 with Pulisic doing his thing against Brazil and then go with a more defensive, counterattacking approach against Mexico. Maybe that was the plan.
The only thing is the Saracen quote is from after the roster was named, so he knew that Pulisic wouldn't be there.
No, then never mind. I don't know what they're doing.
I mean, I don't either. That's why I find it weirdly fascinating, because I assumed the shape we saw against Brazil would be the shape we saw against Mexico, so now I'm more confused.
This is not the optimistic way to end it, but I'll be honest and say, like, I kind of don't care as much because, again, it's a U.S. team in a state of transition where we have our GM now, but we don't have a coach. It's really difficult to know what the permanent plan is going to be. Mm-hmm. If this were Dave Saracen is the official U.S. coach and he's going to be there forever, then I would want to see it be an evolution and, okay, we've learned this. We're going to try to tinker with this. We're going to try to fix this mistake so we know how to deal with it in the future. That it's not going to be him, I'm sort of okay with whatever happens. If it is that and they are trying to evolve, that's great. If it is something totally different and he's just trying stuff to see what works, that's fine too.
All right, final couple of questions. Ernie Stewart was at the game.
He was.
Right? There was an interview. He spoke to a lot of members of the press. I read like Henry Bushnell's thing and Grant Moore's thing. There's quite a lot to pick apart there in terms of the search for the coach. Should we maybe talk about that as part of the Mexico preview on Monday? So it's worth thinking about that. My actual final question for you, so I guess that was more of a office business question, is do you feel any worse about this new generation of talent, right? This like Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Tim Weah team. Are you more concerned about them after seeing them get kind of picked apart by Brazil? Or is this basically what you expected and it's all a learning experience and no need to panic?
More so the latter than the former, for sure.
Okay.
Because it is weird to go with Butters from South Park as an inspirational quote.
It's not what I would have assumed.
I know that, but I'm going to go with it anyway. I think he gets broken up with by his girlfriend and he's crying and like the goth kids are all being mean to him and they're like, aha, you're sad or whatever. And he's just like, yeah, but that's great because I'm so sad now. It allows me to know how happy I'll be down the road because I have this level. And if you're always succeeding, I'm paraphrasing that one, but if you're always
it's too eloquent for Butters.
No, he's even more eloquent.
Oh, really?
It's way better. It's way more poetic. But it is the case that, like, if you're always just succeeding and everything's great, then you're just expecting everything to be great. I like it when the boxer gets knocked down and gets up and knocks down the other boxer. Like, you want to have that moment where you got to figure out what they're made of.
Yeah.
And will Trapp come back and scream at people the next time they don't track their people? Does Anthony Robinson clock somebody as soon as he gets an opportunity against Mexico, just to remind everybody, like, no, I can play physical. I'm not getting bodied off the ball every time.
Interesting.
I want to see how they respond. That's what it's all about. To write off a team that lost to Brazil for not being good enough would be something that would happen on, say, one of the larger TV networks when they asked you for a hot take.
And then what would we do, right? We go to the next generation of young talent and we just call up George Bello and Andrew Carlton. And then if those guys lost,
eventually we're getting to like 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
this U6 scored 15 goals in his debut.
So forgive me for what I said this, but here's a good closing message, right? I think we've picked apart tactically maybe what went wrong in this game.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going to support the US national team and support these very talented young players, then it really means support them, right? Like, watch this game. Find out try and figure out what's gone wrong, but don't turn on any of these players. Do not turn on any of these players. Support them, wish them the best, just hope that they keep improving. And, you've got until 2019 for the Gold Cup, maybe 2020 for Copa America, 2022 for the World Cup. There's a lot to look forward to in the future, so let's use the friendlies for what they are.
Including David Moyes as U.S. national team manager.
We
thought we were out, but we got to talk more.
We've been in this office so long, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
How about we put a pin in David Moyes?
Yeah.
Just for fun. How about we put a pin in David Moyes until Monday's show when we said we'd talk about the Ernie Stewart stuff?
Yes, that works for me. David Moyes is not going to be the manager of the United States national team. That's all I have to say about that.
I mean, we'll see. All right, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me this evening/morning.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and please join us again on Monday for the USA-Mexico preview.